I guess now that the dust has settled, now that we've had a full 24 hours to fully process and comprehend the humbling defeat we faced against Real Madrid at home in the Champions League quarterfinal, it's time to discuss what the hell happens. It's time to discuss why we lost that game. It's time to discuss what cost us. And it's time to discuss how Real Madrid taught us some very valuable lessons that this young Chelsea team can take forward into the future. You guys, I'm here to give my post-match thoughts and analysis in this What We Learned video. Hope you guys enjoyed. But before we get into anything, I need to get one big plug out of the way first. Today's video is brought to you by Profit Accumulator. Profit Accumulator is a match betting website, and essentially the difference between match betting compared to standard betting is that it already covers all possible outcomes. Essentially, you know exactly what profit you're bound to make before placing any bet. And match betting essentially allows the user to create a steady profit by using bookmakers' offers against each other. I'm sure you guys have seen it before. Of course, sign up to this bookmaker, earn like a £20 bonus here, earn a £40 bonus there. And this is where Profit Accumulator comes in to save the day and make everyone's life easier, because essentially they find all these offers scoured on the internet in seconds, allowing you to use these bookmaker offers against each other. I mean, currently on their website, there's over 150,000 people that have signed up. It has proven to be a very steady side income and side hustle for many people. Of course, don't expect fireworks, but yeah, there is something tangible here. And for people that's already invested in betting, already understanding match betting, and people curious to want to learn more, there is currently a free trial on the website which will allow you to test out the website, get familiar with things, and of course provide all the information and resources that one will need. So right now, you guys, try it out for yourselves. You'll find a link below in the description. Right now, let's discuss Real Madrid and let's discuss some of the lessons that they taught us in last night's game. Now, we saw some incredible performances from their players. I think most notably Karim Benzema. He scored a hat-trick. You know, in a quarter-final against us at Stamford Bridge, you never see that happen. And it was the manner of the quality of his goals which really just stood out. I mean, that first header he scored against us, one of the best headers I've seen in God knows how long. And for the second goal as well too, that cross was decent, but there was still a lot of work for Benzema to have to do to create a goal from that situation. I mean, he was essentially falling back, and to have that technique with his head, you know, to have that, you know, neck strength as well too, to just direct that ball just away from Edouard Mendy, that was world class. And you know, I think that he taught Lukaku some valuable lessons in that game last night. But I think one thing that really stood out to me about how Madrid played was the confidence in which they came in before this game even started. I mean, before the kickoff, you know, they released their team lineup an hour before we released ours. We saw Valverde playing as part of a front three as well too. And I think when you're seeing a team that ready, you know, we saw the fight talk from these players during the press conference as well too. They felt like they were ready to exercise their demons against us after suffering defeat against us in last season's Champions League. Well, they definitely proved that they weren't here to play around and they had to be taken very seriously. But I think most notably, the thing that Madrid has that we don't have is they have a better balance and combination of a system, that framework, as well as allowing their players to cook. I think ultimately, you know, you can't, you know, overcoach your team. I think you need to have that balance of player ability and quality. You know, but top players, they don't have to be told where to play this pass, when to move, where to be on the field. They know exactly what they have to do already, and essentially just give them that framework to allow them to cook. And there was one component in their game which we just don't have at this point in time. And that's the fact that they are very comfortable playing compact, but even more comfortable playing expansive football. And why is that? Well, this is where the player quality really shines and comes through even more. Look at some of the passes they were playing on the counter-attack. I mean, when they were literally breaking away against us time and time again last night, I mean, there was like a rhythmic type of understanding between all the players. We were seeing incredible passes played from Kroos, from Modric as well too. And they're very comfortable playing with greater distances. And of course, when you play like this, there is a risk and reward factor. But for me, and I say this word quite a lot, yeah, it comes down to taking those calculated risks. And I think you can take calculated risks when you really have belief in the quality of the players that you have at your disposal. I mean, Ancelotti is one of those managers that allows teams to cook. I mean, we saw that ourselves during the, his time as our manager at the club. I'll never forget the season under him when we won the league. You know, the amount of goals he was scoring for fun. It was one of the best seasons I've ever seen in my entire life. I had so many fond memories and moments from that. And, you know, we saw a team where we saw the full attacking prowess, the full extent of your Frank Lampard, who scored like a record amount of goals in that season. Didier Drogba as well too. Malouda, Anelka, top players bringing involvements into the team and game. And I think ultimately that is the final thing that we need to add to our game, because there's only so much Tuchel can do on the field by telling players where to be and what to do. But as we saw, in moments when you need the individual players on the field to be able to express their quality, to know when to be, to take risks, to be expansive, you know, to get their passes right, to be efficient with how they use the ball, you know, to show that quality when they're playing vertically. I think that's what ultimately cost us, and that is something that I feel Tuchel needs more time with, and he has to be backed by getting the right players for his squad for next season. I think for me, man, I kind of saw the natural limits for a lot of these guys in the team. And when you see Real Madrid, you know, players like Kroos, Modric, you know, last season, everyone was like seeing these guys as jokes after we just absolutely ran through them in midfield. But I mean, they show their quality, and they show that quality really is eternal and will forever be the ultimate difference maker. But managers can't always control against that. I mean, a recent example too is that recent game between Man City and Atletico Madrid. You know, Atletico defending, you know, a 0-5-5 system. Pep Guardiola in the end, second half, brings on Phil Foden. And that moment of quality that Foden showed instantly, you know, to receive between four players, turn, in like 2 touches, you're playing a through ball in behind to find De Bruyne. You can't stop something like that. That's where the players shine. And for me, I feel some of these young guys have the quality now, but I do think maybe the system can take too much priority over allowing some of these players games and actually, you know, evolve and improve over time. But let's see what happens. There's still a long way to go. And I think right now, I definitely want to talk about another thing that kind of bothered me in the game, especially after I watched this game again, putting myself through that burden again. I felt like the tactics cost us in the game yesterday. We can compare the performances last season against Madrid to this season, and these are like 2 completely alien, different performances. I thought last season there was a lot more control with how we played, and I just felt a real confidence that we are destined to beat this team because of how we play, the framework, the structure. Madrid can't cope. But in yesterday's game, I just felt like it was way too expansive for the sake of it. I felt like we didn't play with any control whatsoever. And it felt like the game plan was kind of to win the game in the first half. I felt like we committed way too many men forwards, and we didn't learn any of our lessons in that defeat against Brentford, where we did the same thing and got punished on the break time and time again in those wide areas. You know, when you're making the same mistake twice and quick concession against, you know, a smaller team in Brentford, and then in like one of the biggest teams in the world, Real Madrid. For me, I felt like Tuchel can take some responsibility behind, you know, the tactical setup and structure that he used against Real Madrid. Of course, I have to stress this too. I completely have a lot of sympathy for Tuchel as well too, because a combination of certain players not being fully fit, but most importantly, losing out on key players as well. And for me, that key player that was lost was Ben Chilwell, and I'll discuss that in my final point in today's video. But you know, ultimately we lost that game because Valverde took Azpilicueta out of the game, and I felt like Ancelotti knew that Aspi would be playing there. And unfortunately, Aspi doesn't have that ability on the left-hand side to, you know, create overlaps, to stretch the play. That would have been very beneficial for Christian Pulisic, who, you know, when you compare the performances of Vinicius Jr., where Madrid were constantly creating wide overloads to free him 1v1 against Christensen, we could not do the same thing for Christian Pulisic. And when this guy's best trait is his dribbling ability in tight areas, and we can't, you know, utilize that skill set, that is a bit disappointing. And naturally, that's going to limit how the team can break down the opposition. But for me, man, Aspi was that weakness that got targeted, because that was how Real Madrid were able to create the overloads. You know, Valverde pressed this guy very high. Valverde, you know, really stopped Azpilicueta, you know, going forward as much. With Aspi, a lot of times being forced to play passes backwards and back into midfield, you know, allowing for easy recirculation, allowing for Real Madrid to regroup defensively off the ball as well too. But what the most important thing was, was on the ball when it came to breakaways. Valverde kept withdrawing off of Azpilicueta, which was forcing Aspie to have to move infield to try and get him. That was freeing up space for a Carvajal to run in behind as well too. But most importantly, by doing that, this unlocked Karim Benzema, because Benzema plays as a striker that doesn't play close to defenders like what Lukaku does. Benzema operates and roams between the lines, and he withdraws off the defender, which makes him very hard to pick up and mark. So when you have a player like him that's looking to double up alongside Valverde on the right hand side, you're taking out Aspie, you're taking out Rudiger, and you're affecting that defensive line. So constantly, due to their quality passing as well too, they were able to create the overload down the opposite flank, where Vinicius Jr. had all the space in the world to target Andreas Christensen. And I'm sorry, watching the game against Rice, there was nothing Christensen could have done. You know, there's not many players could have stopped that at all, to be honest. Because fundamentally, because Tuchel knows that we couldn't bring and build any attacks on the left-hand side, we couldn't have that natural balance that we would have if Ben Chilwell was also playing on the left-hand side. It meant that we forced all our attacking build-up down the right-hand side. And this meant that essentially we kind of played as like a 4-1-4-1 when it came to playing attack. You know, Reece James was literally playing as like a winger a lot of times, you know, bombing up forward as well too. And essentially that gap, that distance between Christensen and James was just too big, was just too severe. And that was how we got exploited and beaten, because again, in those moments, Real Madrid have world-class players. They know when to make the press, they know when to time their moves and when to exploit. You know, you've got Benzema roaming in behind Jorginho, who's out of the game. You know, Mason Mount, Kante getting caught up the field as well too. Madrid were creating these pressing traps for us, and then they had the quality to play through that because their players know what to do, because they've been playing at the highest level for like literally over a decade. I guess maybe the only way to have countered that was maybe to change the approach. Maybe we could have played off the ball a bit more, which we have done for like most of what we've done under Thomas Tuchel over like 18 months being managed by him. For me, these two recent games are some of the most uncharacteristic games we've seen in God knows how long, because as I keep stressing, the benefit of what Tuchel brought is how he limits counter-attacking threats from opposition. We were completely open and exposed, and I didn't necessarily understand the onus on Mount, Kante and the rest having to press so high and having to press those Madrid fullbacks. I just felt like we were creating our own danger, and ultimately we kind of beat ourselves due to this. And you know, it's a shame, it really is, but this is what happens at the highest level. It's a combination of needing to have the right tactics alongside top performances. Don't listen to this thinking that I'm just excusing the players and blaming the system. It's a combination, yeah, because they have to execute the system as well too. And when you're playing against the very best teams, yeah, the tactics, the performances, they all add up when you're competing against your Benzemas, Cruises, Viniciuses, etc, etc. For me, I don't understand the approach of having to win the game in the first 45 minutes. Maybe a part of me thinking a 3-5-2 could have been the one, you know, allowing Kante to not have to be so exposed further up. And I think essentially with a 3-5-2 as well too, you could have had Kovacic playing on the left-hand side, meaning that we know Azpilicueta's not going to bring no width, but at least someone like Kovacic would have the license then to break the lines from his position, make those like wide runs to the left-hand side, and of course allow us to keep and control the ball against Real Madrid, which is exactly what we did last season. So you guys, I'm now going to end things with my final point, and I think one of the reasons behind the loss in the end was that I felt like we've kind of plateaued and our limits were naturally exposed. And some of those limits to me are not being able to rely upon Lukaku. You know, you're spending record amounts of money on a record signing in a game like this. You want to rely upon him. He had his moments. He didn't come through. On one hand, I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's understandable. I think maybe if we're all being real deep down, do we really feel that Lukaku is really going to have that big impact coming off the bench? Especially knowing that he hasn't really been playing for us like that in God knows how long. And I don't think this guy's ever been like an impact player of the sub bench either. You know, I feel like another reason that costs us too is that we forever struggled against teams that sit back and park the bus. I feel like our open play and breaking teams down, stretching them, creating spaces, making overloads, we just don't seem to be able to play at that level to consistently break teams like that down. And again, for me, another limit is the fact that we didn't sign any proper rotational options in midfields, and I think in the wing-back areas as well too. You know, when I'm making this video, it's not about criticizing Tuchel, it's his fault. I'm trying to paint a picture of all things that contributed towards a loss like this, because I felt like we got caught out. You know, I'm looking at Kante putting a very poor performance. Am I surprised though? I'm looking at Kovacic as well. I thought it was kind of so-so. I mean, these are two guys in particular that have suffered many like small injuries throughout the season, which has killed momentum after momentum. And it's just like in the make or break part of a season, you want to have that consistency. You want to have that form behind these guys. And unfortunately, they can't do that because, you know, their bodies have been breaking down at times. Ideally, that's what Saul was in the team for. That's why he was signed, to be that a rotational option to allow your Kantes, your Kovas to get that rest so they don't have to get overused. But you're looking at Kennedy, for God's sake. The club bring him back. He won't be playing at all for us whatsoever because he wasn't bagging in Brazil and he's never been a wing back. He's just not good playing in that position. Ultimately, luck was against us because if Mendy didn't make that mistake, the entire complexion of the game changes because Tuchel knew to make the tactical choices and subs at the start of the second half, which did allow us to get on the ball more and did limit some of those Real Madrid counterattacks, which we were literally creating for fun in that first half. They're my thoughts and opinions. I'd love to hear yours in the comment section as well. And on that note, I'm Nini FC, this is Blue Lions TV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos. Cool.